this is Michael Massie, and welcome to episode 5 of Massie Messages. Today, we're going to have an intense topic of discussion. Typically, I've been going over the current state of the new laws in Virginia, but there's a lot going on in the world, and especially in the United States, with violence inflicted upon African Americans, whether by other citizens or by police. I thought it important that we have a conversation about that, and so I wanted to start that conversation in episode 5 with a group of millennials. So I have a group of distinguished guests, 5 of them here today, and I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves so you know who they are and a little bit about their background before we get into these discussions.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tyshawn Key. I am a rising Dorito at the University of the District of Columbia, David A. Clark School of Law. For my undergraduate degree, I went to Morehouse College, where I majored in political science. Before then, I was at Patterson High School. I am 24 years old, and I currently serve as the regional chair for the Mid-Atlantic region of the National Black Law Students Association.
Hi, my name is Taylor Massey. I'm from Portsmouth, Virginia. I'm currently 22. I am a 2018 alumna of the University of Virginia, and I currently go to Golden Gate Law School in San Francisco.
Hi, I'm Danielle Honoré. I'm from Portsmouth, Virginia, 22 years old. I am a 2019 alumna of the University of Virginia, and I recently graduated from the Harvard Graduate School of Education. Right now, I am an intern at the American Student Assistance College and Career Planning Center.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jonathan Holloway. I'm from Suffolk, Virginia. I'm 24 years old. I'm a 2018 graduate of Delaware State University. I'm currently going to Liberty University, getting a master's degree in clinical mental health, and I'm currently a counselor and therapist in the city of Hampton.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Michael Massey. I'm 24 years old. I'm from Portsmouth, Virginia. I graduated from Churchland High School. I went on to go to Morehouse College, graduated in 2018, and I am currently a 3L at Howard Law University.
All right, thanks for those introductions. Let me start by just doing a mental health check on all of you. How are you all feeling right now? If you can describe in 3 words how you're feeling currently about everything that's going on in America with these cases, what would you say?
I would say I feel tired, anxious, and just confused.
Definitely anxious. That would be one of the main words I would use. Anguish, but also activated.
Yeah, I would have to agree as well. Kind of confused, also angry, but motivated in the same way to get something done or let our voices be heard.
Definitely.
For me, I would say exhausted, outraged, and steadfast.
Like that.
I would have to agree with this idea of being exhausted. I feel like we've been at this for a while now, and after a while, it does begin to bear on you. So exhausted, angry. I'd be a liar if I said I wasn't, and ready.
Yes, I like that. Ready. And I think all of us, I think that everybody that we communicate with would say that we're all a little exhausted. When this is ever going to end for us. Before we get into these 3 cases, there was something recent that happened in the news with Amy Cooper up in New York. And tell me how this relates. Does this case relate to what's going on in America right now?
I think socially it does relate. It just shows the devaluation of Black lives in America. We've gotten past the point where people can base their realities on the fact that they were taught to hate and they were taught to be racist. With the incident with Amy Cooper, we see people who are recognizing the privilege that they have in America, and now they're exploiting it because they don't believe that Black lives are worth anything. I believe it shows a true devaluation of the lives of our Black communities in America right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think she's the starting point of the problem. And we're not just talking about a problem that came about with Emmett Till. Everyone wants to talk about Emmett Till and how the white woman, falsely accused this young boy and he ended up getting lynched. But it goes all the way back to, the Dred Scott case in 1857, where America had decided that black people were not humans and therefore they didn't have constitutional rights. And so with that ideology in mind, it made a ripple effect that still affects us now. It just manifests in different ways where white people just don't see us the same as they see their peers. Well, more specifically, racist white people.
I agree with that.
And to kind of piggyback off of what you just said, racism has always been here. It's something that some people keep in the shadows of their home, but now with us being millennials, everything gets caught on camera. Mm-hmm. So someone may be racist, may walk past it, but if it gets caught on camera, then I gotta call you out.
Absolutely. I think that was a good point about the Dred Scott case. I think from a legal standpoint, we've had like the slave codes where it just basically enumerates the rights of slaves and let racist people just kill slaves without any punishment. And I think today, the legislation may look a little different, but clearly it still is having the same effects, and we're seeing the same things, and we're seeing them even more, like John said, because we are millennials and where everything is, a lot of things are public now. So.
Forgive me if my thoughts are a little bit scattered because I'm still processing everything that has gone on and is still taking place. But for me, I think it's definitely related. This issue is very multifaceted, and I think that when you look historically at white supremacy and the founding of this country, and you just think about how how we were raised and how we were cultivated to think about ourselves, it speaks to a system, and people know their relationship with power. And I think that the narrative from this may come to be that this is an isolated event, but it's in no way an isolated event. This has been happening for centuries. And I have so much to say about this, but it's definitely frustrating because you have to look at it from, okay, innocent until proven guilty, but for who? Justice for who? And the narrative always changes when it's a black person.
I definitely agree. I think that the Amy Cooper incident really speaks volumes to a lot of things, but more specifically, this idea that Danielle, I believe, spoke of about whiteness and its power. And I think the fact that Amy Cooper was conscious of her ability to use her white womanness to not only victimize this black man, but she was confident in her ability so much so that she knew that if she called the cops, a thing would happen. So this kind of leads to this to the question of relation, right? It's directly related because there are plenty of Amy Coopers who are doing the same thing every day. And just because Mr. Cooper was the word slipped me, but I guess conscious enough to say, hey, I might need to record this because a bad thing might happen. It doesn't negate that relation. So I think it's definitely related. And when it actually goes all the way through, really bad things can happen, like the instance with Mr. Floyd or even Mr. Arbery.
You mentioned Mr. Cooper was conscious, and just given his background and what he did, I just wonder if black people should have to be conscious in these situations. What if he didn't have that level of knowledge and that ability to diffuse the situation or try to be aware in the situation? Or what if it was when you think about the school to prison pipeline and how children are the children that are most disproportionately affected are disabled, or black and brown children, when you think about people that are disabled that may not be able to communicate or maybe autistic, and how do you think that and this is like, you don't have to necessarily answer, but I just want to know, like, should the responsibility be on us to be conscious, given that these things happen? Because I think about also, like, when you get pulled over and, like, how you have to, if you are college educated, you might carry around your college campus card with your ID, just, hey, like, here's my ID, you know, just to say, hey, like, don't do anything to me, you know, and it's, I don't feel like you should have to separate, you know, your blackness from you to say you went to some school, but a lot of times that is the narrative when people do get pulled over, black people in specifically. So that's just my question about, like, being conscious.
So I think that speaks to a really interesting idea that I saw on Instagram recently, right? About this idea of Mr. Cooper being the perfect victim, right? Like he happened to have gone to Harvard. He happened to have had these different academic accolades and been a prominent member in society, right? But I don't think that you should have to have those things. So I agree with you completely. Like, I don't think that you have to have any type of letters behind your name or even certain clothes on to be treated like a person, right? And I feel like, you know, I'm very glad that he had that consciousness to him, because God knows what would have happened if he hadn't. But I'm also kind of hurt that it takes those things to get that response, if that makes sense. If that answers your question.
Okay, that was good. That was good, and I think you all posed some really good questions for people to think about, and that whole issue of consciousness and how we bear that burden and how we have had to bear that burden for so long, and that goes back to the point that was made earlier about exhaustion. All right, so let's talk about the February 23rd, 2020 incident of Ahmaud Arbery down in Georgia. We all remember this incident. This man was jogging, minding his business, and basically was hunted down by 3 men and treated like an animal. And when we took from February 23rd to May 7th for the first 2 people to be charged with, the whole thing was on video, and then it took until May 21st for the last person to be charged in that case. So what's going on? Why, when you have a clear video of a man running away and being shot down, why does it take from February 23rd, 2020 to May 7th and May 21st for people to respond, for local officials, local prosecutors, local police to do what they need to do to get people off the street that have done heinous crimes?
I think it goes back to, I don't know who told me this, I can't remember if it was my mother or my father, but you're not sorry you did it, you're sorry you got caught. And the same thing speaks to the video, you know, it's like when they're held accountable to the degree where the media, you know, exposes a video or something, that's when they're apologetic. And then I think something Tyshawn said was so profound was about the, you know, perfect versus non-perfect victim. And I think people fail to realize that we're talking about humans. You could be a non-perfect victim. First of all, what exactly is a perfect victim, right? And secondly, you know, just because you're a non-perfect victim and you have been, you have experienced systemic oppression, you know, generational, you know, poverty, like you've been at the center of a lot of different issues of oppression, and people just expect you to just be able to just, you know, bounce back from that. And then I think those people oftentimes get labeled as non-perfect victims. And when you're talking about momentum and progression and moving forward, there's this idea of, you know, is this person a perfect victim? How should we frame their story? How should we let this be pushed forward? Because we know that, you know, before they're actually charging these people, they're gonna look and see if this person has any, you know, criminal record, prior criminal record. How were they in school? You know, and then it's like, did they smoke weed? When you can't find a criminal record, well, did they smoke weed? Let's go look for the, you know, worst pictures online to label this person as a non-perfect victim, because only the perfect victims deserve some type of forgiveness. And it goes back to that isolated event. where it's like not painting the picture for what it is. And I think people are no longer allowing, the picture to be painted as something other than what it really is.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic that we all are sitting here. We've all, gone to college, graduated from college, so we're in a different class of people at this point. But imagine how we all went to public high schools. So imagine if we were back in 2014 or 2015 and all we had on was our Church on High sweatshirt, or our King Sports sweatshirt. They're looking at us differently because now it's like, this is just some public high school kid that we're talking about. We're not talking about a person who went to Harvard, a person who went to Morehouse or Howard or law school, whatever it has. So it's like, why is it that this narrative shifts because he wasn't at this level of education or fluency or anything like that? It's harder to fight an educated Black person versus someone that doesn't have as much education. It's easier to disregard and basically, as we talked about, devalue people that don't have, what they call acclimates. And it's unfortunate. And I think that, all these prosecutors having these excuses as to why, they can't be on the case and conflicts, it just makes people very, apathetic of the system. And it also goes back to politics, because when these prosecutors, not obviously lower level prosecutors are not elected officials, but the DA of a city is elected. So it goes back to those elections. It's what's going to get me reelected, what's going to get me put back in office. And so I can disregard things if no one's talking about it because it's not going to affect my election. But now that there's a video out, it's like, oh, this is publicity. I got to do something because I'm not going to be able to be at the top. I'm not going to be able to keep my power if I don't do, the right thing or what's going to get me back in office. So it goes back to politics too, and it goes back to voting.
And who's funding your campaign?
Right.
I also feel like there's some people deal with it as far as being like a society norm. They thought it was okay. They recorded it on their phone, following, gun down another Black man. Like in your mind, like you said earlier, you gotta be conscious of what you know and what you're doing. If you already know you're doing that, why make it a video? Why even do it? And some people think that's all right when they already should know. Okay, I either treat a person this way or that way, good or bad. But if you're genuine, I'm not gonna treat a certain type of person wrong. But like you said, it's born in them, it's taught in them, and when it comes down to it, they're gonna make the decision to do it or not. And when they are in office, or when they do have a position, they think they can do what they want.
Yeah. So, so I definitely agree with John in that this normalcy of racism and like how it negatively affects who we are as Black people. But I also feel like there's just a lack of care in the systems that govern us when it comes to Black people. Like, the reason I think that the prosecution was delayed so long was that like just not enough people in that office cared to do something about it.
Right.
Because they had the video for a while. And the video is clear as day, and anybody, like even that lowest level prosecutor, if he or she got that video, they could have done something, right? And so I just think that there's just a genuine lack of care and lack of respect for who we are as people, who we are as humans, and who we are as contributions to society, right? If bare minimum, if you just look at the things that we contribute to society, right? Be it financially, be it culturally, just if you look at the bare minimum, even still, there's a disregard for who we are. And I think that disregard leads to a lack of care, which leads to these things happening.
I think that's a really good point. I think we need to charge these prosecutors to get more in touch with the communities that they serve. We've seen prosecutors prosecute Black people who have committed crimes or committed murders on much less, without videos and circumstantial evidence. And so I think that's a really good point. I think in those offices, we just don't have enough people who care about the communities. We see it's easier to throw an illiterate man into jail. It's easier to throw someone with a disability into jail. It's easier to throw a Black man into jail than two other white men or prominent white men in society. And we've seen that over and over again in the mass prison industrial complex. So, I think that's a really good point. I think we need to charge these prosecutors to do a are serving our communities and they are serving our government.
Okay. Let's talk about Breonna Taylor. This is one of the more troubling cases for me personally, because you can't be more of a victim in a case, in a situation like this, where someone kicks your door in and slaughters you. And this incident happened on March 13th, 2020, and there is an investigation going on, but no one has been charged. Her life was taken from her. Ironically, her life was used to serve and save others' lives, as she was an emergency medical technician. And so every day she went out helping and saving people, and then her life was taken away. And you know, if you know about these people who work in these fields, she's working with police officers every single day of her life. You know, she's in with the law enforcement all the time, and these people have taken her life, and no one has been held accountable. And what do you all think?
This one is frustrating for me because I feel like this delay is because they're focusing so much on her boyfriend. And so when they first knocked in the door, he did fire a shot, but it's because he thought they were about to get robbed or something. Somebody's banging through their door. Who is it? He's trying to protect, Miss Taylor, but they end up coming in and shooting 20 rounds into their home. And it's like, if you're just one shot versus 20 is very frustrating, but they're so focused on let's charge him because he's been charged. So he's been charged with attempted murder of a police officer and aggravated assault. Their focus is so much on let's get the boyfriend, Mr. Walker, and less on, well, what about the fact that they shot an innocent person? And so I feel like that's why nobody's charging, there's just this delay, they're just pushing it out, because they're focused on the wrong thing, they're focused on the black man in the situation.
I think what's interesting is that we've seen this narrative for so long in history. Serving won't save you from racism. You look at the war and black people served and then came back and weren't even treated like a human, but you can get drafted. Right. When you come back here, protect us, but when you come back, we're not gonna protect you. And so I think that same narrative goes to,
Very good example.
Thank you. But I think it goes back to the elephant in the room, which is that we can charge these, officers and hold people accountable for what they're doing, but at the end of the day, we have a fundamentally, institutionally flawed system that's operating in the way that it was intended to operate. Black bodies have always been exploited. They've always been dehumanized or criminalized, and so this is the way in which the system is supposed to operate as it pertains to us, or at least how it was created. And so I think I'm still optimistic, but at the same time I look at it as you can charge, these officers, but at the same time, I'm not saying they shouldn't be charged, because I definitely want them to be held accountable, but it doesn't stop, 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. It doesn't stop from, you could leave here and drive up the street and it'd be you next. And then we're trying to get them charged. Like, that's not fair to us. And for me personally, I haven't been able to watch the videos. I can't. I'm not in a mental space to do that, and I just can't fathom that right now. It's too much, and I think people need to be conscious of how these videos and watching them, how that's affecting your own mental health and how that's affecting you as a person. And it shouldn't take a video to humanize Black life.
That's
Very true. I would definitely gonna agree with both of y'all's points, because when I do think the system is flawed. When you do if you're doing your job, if you're an officer, you know what house, what apartment, or what complex to go to. Not kicking the wrong door. That's one issue. Another is how, like you said, how do you empty 20 rounds into a place that you don't even know? You don't know who's inside. Why don't you announce yourself first before coming into the scene? And then for us as Black people, I think it's just like you said, dehumanized. They're gonna take advantage of what they already know. If we can frame a Black man to create this picture, then we're gonna go with that instead of actually assessing the truth.
Yeah, I was reading an article and I'm paraphrasing what they said, but they were basically saying that people always want to frame the victim as, well, they weren't an angel, but Miss Taylor saved lives, so she was an angel. So now what do you have to say? Like, what is going to be your next excuse for why you can't move forward in this case, or why you can't hold these police officers accountable? There's nothing bad in her record from what we know at this current point, and even that's irrelevant because they killed her. She didn't kill them. And they always, and you know, the article was talking about, the officers claim that they announced themselves, but there's witnesses in the complex that said they didn't announce themselves. So now you're lying. So you've gone from she's not an angel, now you're lying about the fact that you announced in your procedure, which means you know what you did was wrong. What are you gonna do next? What are you gonna say next?
So I think you spoke on a very important concept earlier, Taylor, about Miss Taylor's black womanhood, right? Like I think that the reason our officers haven't been charged is because, you know, just as it's already hard enough for a black person to get legal recognition when they're the victim, I think it's like, just as in everything else, it's probably 3 or 4 times harder for a black woman to get that same type of respect or that same type of action on her behalf. Like, not because it's not just that she's black, but now she's black and a woman. What if she was black and a woman and disabled? We might have never even heard of it, right?
Right.
So I really feel like a lot of the issues associated with the prosecution in this case is based primarily on her black womanhood. And I think until we are able to get recognition as a people first, or as just like, well, yeah, as people, we're never going to be able to get Ms. Taylor the justice that she deserves, especially when the systems and the operators of the system have been trained like their whole lives to view us in these lenses.
Okay, let's talk about George Floyd, the news case in Minnesota. This happened on May the 25th, and just was yesterday, May 29th. One of the officers has been charged. We saw a video, the second video we saw, the first video we saw one officer kneeling on his neck. Another video showed up later. There were 3 officers leaning on him, on different areas of his body. And so yesterday, May 29th, one officer was charged with 3rd-degree murder and manslaughter. And so the others have not been charged at this point. So it took 4 days from the point of him being on the ground, the officer on his neck, and him dying. And also there was an autopsy report that came out and gave some conclusions. So the charges were a little faster on this occasion, so there's a little difference. But again, even with the video, there still was a delay. And so what made things faster this time? And again, why was there even a delay? Also, even if it's 4 days, it's still a delay. Because one of you mentioned, I can't remember which one of you said it, you know, when African Americans are charged with a crime, they're getting arrested that day. You know, you're not going home. You're gonna get arrested that day. So why is there still a delay here, even with a video? And so your thoughts?
Well, I think the unity of the community definitely helped. There was a huge outcry when we found out that there were people not being charged, and I mean, I think that was appropriate. I think a lot of people view the black community as radical or too dramatic when it comes to situations like this. But at the end of the day, it's lives at hand. And it's lives that we're dealing with, and they're being lost every single day. I think there's been about 30 black men that have been killed by police officers this year. And everyone's plainly just sick of it, and you can't slap someone 3 or 4 times and then expect them to just kneel down and keep taking it. And at this point, they're kneeling on our necks, and it's getting harder to breathe, and it's getting harder to just live daily life in this society.
Okay. Anybody else?
That one's hard, I know.
Yes.
It's tough.
That one.
It's tough.
What makes this one hard?
I think there's just something so much more personal about being able to put your knee on someone's neck. And not to say that there's no value in shooting a person, you shouldn't take people's life, but he seems just so much more evil and conscious and very strategic in the way that he did this. Because the man is in cuffs, so it's like, if you're worried about him doing something, you don't have to worry because his hands are now behind his back in chains or handcuffs. But to further put your knee on his neck and put that pressure, knowing that he can't breathe, he's yelling that he cannot breathe, and you're just acting like he's not saying anything. It just seems so much more heinous and just evil. There's something evil about it.
Yeah.
And I watched the video, so a black woman took the video actually, and I watched her video because she came back to the store and she was telling her story. She's yelling in front of the store and she's like, I was only 5 feet away. I was only 5 feet away while I watched this man scream for his life. That was heavy. That was really, really heavy to watch her, and she cried, and she, people are just walking past her and she's saying nothing. And it's like, no, I just watched a murder yesterday. Somebody put their knee on a man's neck and he's no longer with us. It just felt so much closer. I don't know.
Yeah, I would agree. It's definitely, like how we all said, we're kind of tired of it. And in the span of 2020 has been rough, but now it's just starting to be a pattern. Not every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, it's always something. And even with this situation, like you said, it looks like he did it on purpose. Like, how do you not know you have your body weight on somebody's neck? If it's 3 of you, then you already apprehended him. What more is he gonna do? He's already handcuffed. But also, you have intent. Like, he has a bad track record already. So, it's already a learned behavior. But at the end of the day, if you want to kill somebody outside of using a weapon, that's at your disposal. And he did that and did it like it was just nothing.
And it was for a whole 7 minutes, and then after his body stopped moving, he was still kneeling on him for another 4 minutes.
I want to speak to abuse of power and on all levels of the criminal justice system, and I think language really matters. So before I talk about the autopsy, I just want to mention I was in Charlottesville for a very long time, and I would go to all the city council meetings. I would go to all the school board meetings. You were there. The first time I went to the city council meeting, I was like, Taylor, come with me. You gotta come. She was like, girl, nobody wants to come with you to the city council meeting.
She would be there till midnight. So I was like,
I was like, girl, it's crazy.
she always told me
I
that.
got back, I left, and me and my girl still going on this land. You gotta see it. So I was like, she was like, you're crazy. I was like, you gotta come to the next one. She was like, okay. So for years, I would go to every city council and every school board meeting, and I also started to go and just sit in court. So I would just go sit in court on a Friday and watch how a white judge would interact with black men versus white men. And language really matters, and power and privilege, and if they can be getting seen for the same exact thing, and the judge would belittle the black man and say, "Come here, boy. I'm a man, not a boy." And you're not gonna get out of here unless you show me an address that you can go to. Now, white man comes up with the same exact charge. Hey, buddy, we're gonna get you out of here. Buddy, boy, come on now. And that just speaks to a different power structure and relationship and camaraderie. And that just, when you think about the autopsy and the report, and basically that just opens up the door for like, well, technically I'm not really to blame, you know? And I think the frustrating part about that is I remember being a kid and my uncle had a bracelet on his arm to communicate if something ever happened, what he was allergic to, so you couldn't, you know, if he went to the hospital emergency room, you couldn't give him this or that. And if he had a condition, and he wore this bracelet all around, it's a silver bracelet or a nipple, something like that. And I would look in stores, I was like 5, and I would look and see other people with it. And I'm like, cool, they can communicate if something's wrong. And I don't know if you guys saw what the mayor said about, you know, him being able to, George Floyd being able to communicate that he can't breathe. Like, and for me, I'm just like, well, we have bracelets to communicate if we can't breathe, but if you're actually talking about it, it's like my fault because I'm saying I can't breathe. And so that just speaks to, again, the power structure and the ability to abuse power. And I think it goes back to people know that, you know, white racist cops know that the system will defend them at all ends. They will go to any extreme to defend them until the point where they can't defend them. And even when they do, you know, finally do, you know, try them and charge them with something, a lot of times it's for the, you know, the least charge possible, you know, and it's like, okay, we're gonna go with what we can get. And then it's like, oh, let's go appeal it because, you know, let's find some more evidence about this person that may show that they were a criminal previously. Let me, you know, paint this narrative. And I think people are very aware of how the system operates and the narrative that has to go forth in order to, you know, make sure that not only, you know, because charging is only, you know, a part of the process. Like, you gotta be convicted, you gotta get sentenced, and you think about like choosing a jury, all these different things go into whether or not we are viewed as human. And I think that plays a role in the delay and getting these things, you know, straightened out. So the autopsy is just like what, you know, pushed me, and I was just like, whoa, like that's what kind of, you know, resonated with me.
So this one was kind of like a harder one for me to talk about. I was actually crying about it like 2 or 3 days ago. Just like off of random, like I heard a really sad song, and like I just thought about the brother, and I thought about him and Mr. Arbery, and so like I don't know if it's just been the pressure of 2020, you know, with COVID, NBA getting canceled, law school going virtual, like law school going like this. I don't know if this was just the straw that broke the camel's back, but I was really in my father's basement, like crying about Mr. Floyd's death really recently, and so I think that, and this will tie back to some of my comments earlier. I think that social media and the ability to get his face circulated and to get his spirit like memorialized through our captions and through our social media posts, I think that has played a huge role in being able to get the first step of this prosecution process done, which is the charge and the investigation and all that stuff. But on that same token, like I think that it's taking a really big toll on a lot of the Black community, and we can see it through the riots, and we can see it through the various protests and all these different things. Like, I think that just being conscious that we have just lost another Black person to the hands of the police, even during a global pandemic, right? Like, even when the world is literally dying, the police still have time and have the willingness and the comfort level to just kill another Black person. And I think that has just been the straw, and it's showing through these riots.
And I think what makes this even more, you know, sad for me, and it's just that this man has a pattern. This isn't his first time. He's been killing people since 2001. And Klobuchar, who is the DA, won't press charge. She just keeps letting him go. She lets him go. She lets him go. And it's like, why? Why do you keep letting him go? Why does it take for it to be all over Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, and Facebook for you to be like, maybe I should do something? And it's also scary because she was in the primaries to run for president. You know? She was in the running to, she dropped out of the race, but it's just like, she was in the running to lead this country. What makes her different from Trump? Because he tweets his racist comments, and she just does stuff behind the scenes. And so it circles back to my comments about politics and voting. It's just, you have to know who is getting into the system and who is going to be in charge. Who's going to be able to abuse that power. You know, we're talking about the leader of this country could have potentially been someone who has let a white man kill black people for 20 years now. 20 years. Just getting away with it. But that's really the blessing of social media in our generation, and it's just that we have been able to put people on blast and call them out and share and retweet and, you know, repost. I don't know, you know, for a long time people have been getting away with stuff because this social media didn't come around until like 2012. And it's only getting, you know, more, it's larger and it's easier to spread information on the internet. It's a whole new world now, but it's unfortunate that now I feel like if I ever have a son, I have to teach him, make sure you pull out your camera when a cop comes around and he's giving you a hard time, or make sure your ID is right where someone can see it so that he doesn't think you're grabbing for a gun, even though you don't have one. You know, it's like we have to change how we teach our children to live in America. It's like right when I teach you how to tie your tie, but make sure you have your phone with you. And it's like, now I gotta make sure you have a camera phone. I can't even give you the little flip phone. I gotta immediately give you an iPhone now because you could lose your life and I would never know what happened unless somebody records it.
Tashawn said something about the riots, and it made me think about how that can be used, the riots can be used to frame black people that are rioting at this point as violent.
Yes.
And how they're not just black people, you know, out there. There are other people in here, you know, police officers actually that are setting buildings on fire or breaking windows, and it looks like, you know, it's just angry black people. And I think we are angry. I think we are angry. I think we have every right to be angry. But I think people need to acknowledge that abuse of power in this system is extremely violent.
Yes.
Physically violent, emotionally violent. It's brutal. And it's sad that, you know, things like this actually happen. And I'm losing my train of thought, so I get back to you.
So I think you also have a very an interesting idea, right? Like about us being angry black people. Yes, we are angry, right? And it's like instead of saying, oh, they're just angry, they'll get over it, why not ask, why are you angry? Like, why not try to address the anger? Like you don't just see a baby crying, and I hate to make this analogy because like I think it can paint a bad picture, right? But you don't just see a baby crying and just say, oh, that baby will stop crying. You'll see if it's hungry. You'll see if it needs a diaper change. You'll see if it's tired. Like you'll see what's wrong with the crying baby, right? Because the baby don't have the ability to communicate. Now, black people, we're far different from babies in so many ways, but we have that ability to communicate. And we're telling you exactly why we're crying. We're being killed. We're being robbed of opportunities. We're being boxed out of housing. We're being blocked out of the markets. Like, this is why we're angry. Now, why are you not helping us? And if you see someone who's continually ignoring your anger, of course something's going to happen. I don't want to say rioting is the answer, but I don't want to say that it's not, because it would be a lie if I said that I agree with that statement on the way, right? But there's something that must be done about this anger in order for this country to like really move past this, right? Because if you continue to ignore anger, the situation only going to get worse.
I think I remember what I was saying. Maybe I remember. So with violence, right? It's like we're framed as violent, but you know, having a knee on someone's neck isn't violent. You know, that's not traumatic. And if you think about America, it's inherently violent. You can go online and look at like Virginia primary sources, and you can see, say for instance, you just search like runaway slave, and you can find an ad from like the early 1800s that literally says, black man missing. Oh, probably not black man, but black guy missing, black slave missing. Here's how you identify him. His ear's missing. Why is his ear missing? Who cut his ear? The slave master, and then you think about how police were formed and the slave patrols and convict leasing and all these different things to police black people. Then you think about generational incarceration and how they separate, you separate people from their family by, incarcerating them, and then don't give their family any resources. Like, how many children in Portsmouth have incarcerated parents?
Right.
How many of those children are provided with resources? Like, Virginia governor doesn't even have the Department of Education have a funding formula for children with incarcerated parents. How can you have a funding formula for children in poverty? How can you have a funding formula for children that are in foster care, but not one for children who are directly affected by the system that was created to incarcerate and criminalize us? And so, this system is very violent, and it makes us look like we're rioting or protesting, or I'm not protesting right now, in that format. But it's like, what happened with Black Wall Street? What happened, with Reconstruction, when it was going good for us and we were actually building businesses and we were, having our own, then maybe, in some cases they did burn our buildings down. Or if not, let's just, let's, what's the word? Not gentrify, let's, what's the word? Something. I can't think of it.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
It's not gentrifying, they have this new word for gentrification. But it's like, even if you have your own business, we're just gonna push you out. So, I feel like black people who are at the center of this have every reason to be upset, to be angered. These are lives, these are family members, these are fathers, and at the end of the day, even if you're not a father, you're not a mother, you're not somebody's child, even though you probably are somebody's child if you got into work. Either way, you're a human, and that should be enough. In a sentence, you're a human. So.
I think that all of your thoughts are very insightful, and I think that your thoughts will help not just millennials. I think they'll help many people. I think that as we leave this discussion today, I would challenge all of you, because you all are some of our best, not because you have educations, but because you are good citizens. And so we cannot have our good citizens be exhausted. We need you all to be ready and to stay ready. And your age group, we need you to stay ready, because it's your charge. Because as you go from being a millennial, then you all start taking over everything. So we gotta have you keep your strength, because it's gonna be a long journey, a long process. So I'm gonna ask each of you to close out, and I'm gonna give you a short window that you can say to that camera, to your millennials, this is what we can do. This is what we can do. We all know we can protest, but what else can you all do? And charge people to try something else. And I'm not saying protesting is wrong in any stretch of the imagination. There's just so much more that needs to be done. Even, I'm gonna steal Danielle's idea, even if you decided, I'm gonna make it my business to go to my city council meetings. Because what that does is that gives me direct information about what's going on in my city, and that includes the police. That includes the head prosecutor, because all that's funded, if not 100%, partially through a city. That's direct action, because you can use that to get information to do something else. And so I'll let you all close out, and then I'll just say one last word and we'll be done. I appreciate you all.
I think in lieu of our governmental leadership, i.e. President Trump, he's made his statement clear. He's made his perspective clear about the entire situation and about the outcry that we have had. He's decided that because we are so angry and it's gotten a bit violent, that he will employ any authorization that he can to make sure that we're gunned down and that we're continued to be killed in silence. And so something I want to do, coming up, we have our general election coming up in November, so I just want to, register as many people as I can to vote, and also while I'm registering, politically educate people about the candidates that we have coming up, because we definitely need to change the leadership, and we need a new face, and we need something else that is going to aid our efforts and our endeavors. And real quickly, I've also seen funds that they're creating for the protesters, just to bail them out of jail, because there are people on the ground doing work, and we need those people there. So I definitely want to take some time, because I am so fortunate to have a job this summer, take something out of my check to give to that type of fund.
Good.
I think for me, it'll probably be working with kids, teach them core values that they can continue to use. I know it's something that we talked about earlier, how, okay, maybe you have to take out your phone every time a cop does pull you over. I'd rather be safe than sorry, but also teach them the right ways to go about certain situations. Not being so hot-headed as, oh, why'd you pull me over? Or why you giving me a ticket? Be more direct, be more sensitive to the situation on both ends. And it's funny because I was working with one of my kids the other day, and a cop was outside his house. So he was like, hey, can I go get some stickers from the police? In my mind, with everything going on, I'm like, I don't think so. But he went over there and talked to him, and after talking to the cop, that actually gave me some insight on, okay, we do have to start having well, we shouldn't start, we should have already started, but have individual conversations with police, with your judges, whether they're at work, whether they're not at work, because we're regular everyday people. All cops aren't bad people, but it's still that stigma. A bad crab in the bucket can still affect everybody. So having these one-on-one conversations can give us more enlightenment, but also them as well.
That's very good.
I think personally there's a lot of different things that people can do, young people specifically. I think that there's a role for everyone. I mean, you don't necessarily have to riot, but there's a role for everyone. You can document these things. Even if you don't want to be on the front lines, you can take pictures, you can be, a photographer. If you want to research, if you want to, read policy, if you just want to, build support groups, community, like there's a role for everyone. And to that end, some different things you can do is, if you have money, you can donate. I think it's the Minnesota Freedom Fund. But also you can donate in your local town. Look up who's actually doing this work in your local town, and definitely you can look up some people, and eventually they'll point you in the right direction. But I would say center the people that are actually doing this work, center the people that are most affected by this work. And there are things called Freedom of Information Act, or Freedom of Information Request, or something, full request, where you can actually, request information, and I think that's just holding people accountable, holding elected officials accountable. You can request what their emails are about, and you can see how they're talking about these situations, because that's public information. You can request how they're spending their funds. You can see, these are local funds used by a credit card. You can, submit a full request. They probably have 14 days to get back to you. But if you submit one and I submit one and you submit one, we can all get our information together. You can be friends with, people that may not be so friendly, and maybe have conversations with them. You can be, see what their plans are. And I think for me, just radical reimagining, a new system that, values everyone and places humanity at the forefront is essential. So as long as you, even if you're just reimagining what it could be, I think that's a goal too.
That's very good. And I'm glad you explained those FOIA requests, because that can be powerful, because you can get the background, the full racial makeup of your whole local police department to see maybe we need to target and go into those city council meetings and get those FOIA requests. Then we need to start speaking at the city council meeting and telling them we need a more balanced police force. That's one of the things that could help our community. So I love that idea of just using those FOIA requests, and they're going to provide you the information as long as you make the request. So that's an excellent resource. You guys moving today?
I would say also support your Black businesses. I mean, I understand that a lot of times supporting Black businesses, they can be more expensive, but let me tell you why they're more expensive. Because they don't have the resources. They don't have this big factory with 1 million workers that are able to put the packages together, which basically makes the system cheaper, which means they can basically sell it to you cheaper. They're gonna be more expensive because they're not as big, but you still need to support them and not ignore them. They're here, they're very present. They make good food, they make natural hair products for your hair. There's a business out there for pretty much anything you want. You gotta be there for your people, because they need you. And when they don't have that money, then they can't pay their rent, then they get thrown out, and you got a Starbucks or you got a McDonald's. You know, you want to see your people be able to work and make an income, because they don't have their business, then they go into the poverty line, and there's a whole other cycle all over again. So you got to support them where they're at. And you also don't get desensitized. In this world of social media, you're going to see reposts and retweets all day long about the same thing. Don't get used to it. Don't get comfortable with the fact that people are being killed. That's not something that you should be numb to. It should still hurt. And if it doesn't hurt, you need to, talk to someone. Talk to a counselor, talk to your brother, your sister, your mom, your dad, and release some of that energy. Be in tune with your emotions, because this isn't something that you should be used to. It shouldn't be a norm. So you have to be aware of yourself and aware of where your emotions and where you're at.
And I think that point is excellent about Black businesses, because we know what speaks in America. It's economics. And so the more powerful our economics are, the louder our voices. And the louder our voices, the more likely we are to have change. And so, very, very good point. Yes, sir, Mr. Key.
So, if I had to make a charge to any millennial watching this, I would ask that you all be selfless enough to infiltrate these systems. That means if you're tired of police killing Black people, become a police. Stop letting them kill Black people. If you're tired of prosecutors overcharging your community, become a prosecutor. Stop overcharging your community. You have to be selfless enough to sacrifice some of the things that you want to do in order to achieve the greater good, not just for us, but our children and our children's children. We're no longer at a point where writing is enough. We're playing a thinking man's game now, and you have to adjust accordingly. The system is trying to eat you, and you have to survive. And you have to make sure that your community survives, so you have to make those types of sacrifices. And I'm just asking that you all be selfless enough to make those sacrifices.
And that is an incredible way to end this segment today, because what Mr. Key just told all of us, the millennials and my generation, and those older than me and younger than me and a lot younger than me, is that we must be at the table. And if we really want change, we cannot be on the sidelines. We have to be at the table. And the table means the tables of power. And so, Mr. Key, we thank you for concluding this segment, episode 5 of Massie Messages, with an incredible group of millennials. I thank you all, incredible guests. You all are some smart folks. And so I just charge you all to just stay leaders, young leaders, and galvanize people, and keep doing good work. And thank you all for listening to us today. We hope we said something that will help everyone. Thanks.